My name's Taylor Rowan, and this is Confident Risks. Today, we're going to talk about the powerful word no, one that I struggled with a lot at the very beginning. My kids seem to have no problem with it, but for me, I always struggled with saying no to things. Without further ado, let's get started. The word no. It's so simple. We're around our family or people we know really well and we can say it pretty easily. But when we get around people in the business or we get around people in our everyday life that we're talking to, our social settings, the word no is a lot harder to say. In a business startup, saying the word no, though, sometimes can be the best thing that you can say. The word yes, a lot of the times, is more hurtful than anything. And I want to line this up with a story today, something that everyone knows I love doing now. But the story is this. We're taking a family road trip. I know everybody can relate to this. One of my favorite things to talk about, actually. So we're gearing up for the road trip. Maybe it's your family's turn for the holiday to drive 3 or 4 hours to a neutral location to meet up with everybody. And you've been thinking about this as a dad, maybe the mom, I don't know. But for me, whenever there's a road trip coming up, it just brings me anxiety. I start thinking about it. I start thinking about everything that's going to happen on that road trip, the bathroom breaks, everything else, and it brings me anxiety. So the day's there. You've packed the night before. You've checked the bags. The kids are ready. Before you leave, you're asking everyone, have you gone to the bathroom? Do you have your headphones? Do you have your iPad? Do you have whatever tablet it is that you're bringing with you? Do you have everything? Yes. It comes time to leave. Your wife's in there. She's packing. She's maybe getting snacks ready. She's getting drinks ready. You're telling your wife, hey, you don't need to bring the drinks. They're going to have to go to the bathroom. Maybe there's arguments that happen. I know that's what happens at my house. But it comes, you finally all get in the car and you ask the last question. Does anybody need to go to the bathroom? And of course, everyone in the car says, no, Dad. They're rolling their eyes. And okay, great. So you're leaving early on a Sunday morning. There's going to be no traffic. You've got it pre-planned. It's a 4-hour trip. You're looking at the estimated time of arrival. It says 1 o'clock. You get on the road. You're driving down the road. You're passing some vehicles. There's nobody out there. That estimated time of arrival is going down. It's now down to like 12:55. You're 20 to 30 minutes in and you're just cruising. Good conversations. All the kids are still happy. They've got their drinks. They've got their snacks. Everyone's good. You're driving along about half an hour in and it finally happens. Lucy in the back seat. It's like, Dad, got to go to the bathroom. And your hands just tense up on the steering wheel. Maybe your head goes down a little bit. And your wife knows. She just knows the angst. And you're talking. You're like, me, I told you we need to have 2 kids, maybe 3. Now we got 5 in the back seat. This is going to happen the whole way. Maybe that starts an argument. I know it would for us. Anyway, you're driving along and you finally say, do you have to stop now? And Lucy in the back seat says, of course, Dad, I got to stop now. It's an emergency. So you get to the next exit, you pull off, and there's no gas station. You drive maybe a couple miles. You're looking at the estimated time. Now it's down to, or it's up to 1:55 or whatever time now. It's just gone up 5 or 10 minutes. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. You get back on the freeway. You go to the next exit, and nothing. Maybe you go one more exit. Finally, there's a restroom. You pull off. Everyone piles out. You're asking the kids, hey, does everyone need to go to the bathroom? And Sam in the back seat saying, no, I don't have to go. Say, go anyway. So they go into the bathroom and you say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and fill up the car with gas. So you start filling the car up with gas. Meanwhile, all the kids are piling into the back seat and you look in the rearview mirror as you go to take off and they've got new drinks, they've got new snacks, and they are just sipping away. The anxiety is through the roof. Clearly, you can tell I've been in this situation before. And the same thing happens 30 minutes later. This situation can relate so nicely to the business industry, and here's why. Here's the other way to look at this story. If it was just you getting in the car, I know for me, let's just take myself for example. If it was just me getting in the car and I'm going on a 5-hour trip, I think to myself before I go, okay, I'm going to have a couple snacks up front. I have my drink. I'm going to watch what I drink before I get on the road so that I don't have to stop. I'm going to make one stop. Halfway there, I know I got to get fuel. I'm going to make the stop. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to get my fuel. And I'm going to keep going down the road. And that estimated time just keeps going down and down and down. And you make it maybe 20 or 30 minutes ahead of schedule because you pre-planned your trip. This is so relatable to the business industry. When you first start out and you're first going down the road of starting a new venture, we talked about it in the first episode. You have the confidence. You have been thinking through what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Maybe it's a law firm. Maybe you're thinking about this is the niche I'm going to have. Maybe you're starting a dance studio. This is who I'm going to cater to. Maybe you're starting a container company. This is what I'm going to do. You think about it, you're confident in it, you're going to do it. So you start down the road. That's what happens when it's a single solo person in the driver's seat and you have that one thing that you're working on, that one thing, that one product that you know you're good at, and you start working on it. That is the example of getting in the car yourself and driving down the road. Here's what happens though. You're 2 months in, and you start getting requests for things outside of what you're used to doing. You get maybe one more kid in the back seat. Now you got 2 kids in the back seat, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, it's just this one job. I'm going to do this job, and I'm going to go outside of what I know to do. I'm going to do this, and then I'll jump right back into what I'm doing. And the profit margins are going to be there, so I'm going to start this. And you're thinking about that. Here's the issue with that. I'm going to give you my example. When I started out and I was selling shipping containers, I was driving to the coast, I was delivering containers. We're going to talk about the first year or two. I've got a couple drivers. We're doing a great thing. We're delivering containers. We've got very little overhead, which we talked about in episode 2. We are making money. Let's just use some round numbers here. Let's say we're making $500 profit for every container that I deliver, and we're delivering 2 containers a day. Round numbers, that's $1,000 of profit a day. Now I get Henry who comes in and says, hey, I want you to put a man door and a window in this container and then maybe an AC unit. And I start thinking to myself, man, I really want to get into one day doing customization. So yeah, I'm going to take the job on. So you take the job on, a container comes in, it sits in the shop that I had, which at the time was my house shop. Goes in the shop, I have a welder come in, they start working on it. And I start getting myself a little bit sidetracked with this job. Now we only have 1 or 2 containers being delivered a day. My thought process and my focus is on this custom job. I tend to jump in and help out with container deliveries if I need to. Now I'm a little bit sidetracked. Now I'm worried about, okay, who am I going to hire on to do this? I get that person in, they start working on the job, and then we hit a hang up. Oh crap, we didn't think about this or this. Now we have to fix it. Oh shoot, we got to get engineering. Now we got to go down the road of engineering. The problem with that is that even if I was doubling my profit on that job, in the end, it's going to end up hurting us. Just like the kid in the back seat. Maybe they're quiet for a couple minutes because they have the new drink, they're taking the sits, but eventually you're going to have to stop again and have them go to the bathroom. Is what it is. The same thing happens. You take on that new job. Maybe it seems great at the beginning. You get a big down payment on something. The money's there. But then you start looking at the cost that it took to do that custom job. And the cost is way higher than anything else. The problem is you got away from what you know. Episode 1, we talked about doing stuff in parallel. The same thing happens when you start. When you start your business or you start your new job or you start doing something else, you have to still do things in parallel. And here's what I mean by that. When I was working my original job, when I was thinking about starting, I was working the container job in parallel. I was driving to the coast, I was selling containers. So I had my standard income and I was doing something else on the side because it was a learning time frame. When I started just selling shipping containers, I started working on in parallel 3D modeling because I wanted to eventually do customization. So I had this steady income of selling containers and renting containers, and I was working in a parallel. Once I started doing custom containers, I started thinking to myself, okay, now I need to do something else in parallel. So I started thinking about the fire industry and developing our own products, like I've talked to you in previous episodes about. Then once I got in the fire industry and I was doing that, now I developed different products. I was always working in parallel. You have to do the same thing when it comes time to start something new or to do something different in your business. We think to ourselves, okay, yeah, I can take that on. It's kind of like starting a honey-do list at home where the wife says, hey, I need you to fix this. And so instead of pre-thinking about what you have to do, and again, this hits home with me again, I start thinking, oh yeah, I'll tackle that real quick. Oh shoot, what materials do I need? Crap, I need this. I run to Home Depot or Lowe's and I pick it up. Then I say, oh crap, I need this bit that I don't have. And I start going all these different directions, and this job that should have taken me 15 or 20 minutes is now taking me an hour, 2 hours, sometimes even longer than that. It's because I didn't pre-plan for it. If you're going to do something different outside of the purview of what you're doing, you have to plan for it. And what does that take sometimes? It takes saying no to customers. And that word can sting so much at the very beginning. You're on this train, you're kind of going down, you're doing your path, you're making money, and you start thinking, okay, I want to make some more money. So you just take on the job. You have to think through something like that before you take it on. We have the same thing now in our NPI department. NPI department is new product integration, is what that stands for. If we're going to take on a new product, it has to go through a whole process. What's the design? How does it go together? How is it fabricated? How do we think through it? And the reason we do that is because that's a 2-person team. It's basically myself, my drafter, and then our quality guy. Well, it's a 3-person team. And we think through the whole process. That way we're not bothering anybody else with it at the beginning. We take our extra time, we think through the process, we make sure that it's done completely right, and then we implement it. You have to be able to do that, and you have to be able to say no at the beginning. Now, if it turns into something where you're saying no, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times on something, and it's the same request over and over, maybe there's something there that we need to be focusing on. But we don't go outside the purview of what we're doing at the beginning. I can't stress this enough. I mean, this has hit home more times than I can tell you on a number of different areas. Is I get excited, I want to make somebody happy, I think someone's my friend going into this, and I want to do this for them. But down the road, all it's going to do is it's going to bring up issues. Focus on what you're doing at the beginning and become great at it. Even if you don't have all of the work in the world, this ties back to that second episode we talked about, or third episode we talked about, which was keeping your overhead low. If you're doing that, if you're keeping your overhead low, if you're keeping the expenses of your business low, you're able to get extremely good at the one thing you know. Then when you move on to the next topic or the next thing, it's going to be easier to do it because you figured out something that worked. You're now implementing it in parallel. And when it comes time to execute, you're going to do it much better. Now, here's what I will say about this. There are other ways or other avenues of taking on new work that aren't going to affect you, i.e., when I had those custom jobs that came up, something that I figured out after, let's just say the second or third one that I took on and I lost money left and right, I found the company that I was picking up containers from at the coast also did customizations. They were kind of a competitor, but not really. I was picking up containers from them at a good price point, but they also did customization. So I started thinking through, okay, if I've got somebody who wants to have a man door, who wants to have a window, who wants to have an AC unit in their container, I'm going to hire that company to do it for me. What does that do for me? If I find that company that's able to do something for them, and for you guys, maybe, if it's not a physical item that you're looking to start your business on, if you're able to find somebody else that you can consult with, somebody else who maybe has a competitive business or someone who does something like that, and you're able to have them still charge you, obviously, for doing the work, but if you're able to do a small little markup on what they're charging you, a lot of times that's going to work out a lot better in the long run than you taking it on. So going back to my example on that customization job. So now I was hiring a company to do the man doors, the windows, the AC units, and a bunch of other small stuff for me. So then my drivers were still able, in parallel to all that, picking up their containers, delivering them to customers, picking up their containers, delivering them to customers. While at the same time, that company was working on the man door, the window, the AC unit. So instead of maybe doubling, go back to our round numbers, instead of maybe making $1,000, because at the end of the day I was losing it, maybe my markup was only $200 more. But what that did for me is this. When that customization was done, I've had no headache. I've had no thought process that's gone into it. My guys could go over, pick that finished container up, deliver it straight to the customer. So what does that do for me? It puts the liability back on the company that did the work for me. They now are the ones that are dealing with the schedule. They're the ones that are now dealing with the customization. Any hiccups that come along, they're the ones dealing with it. I'm still making a small profit, and it takes me no extra time. I'm picking that product up, I'm delivering it to my customer. So even though the margin at the beginning seems lower, it's actually much higher because the stress level on yourself isn't there. The great analogy comparing this back to the first story I told you was this. It's like you're going on that trip and you got another family driving with you. Another family says, hey, we'd love to have the kids jump in the car. Maybe they got one kid and they don't know what it's like traveling with 4 or 5. And you say, oh, sure, that sounds fantastic. The other kids jump in that car. Now, are you going to get there any faster? No. but the stress level that you're dealing with, maybe the things you're able to talk about in parallel with the person that you're with, maybe the conversations bring you a lot more joy and not frustration and anxiety. And now I know for me, I drive with my radio off and I just think the whole time. So now I'm able to utilize that time to do something else. We're still going to get there in the same amount of time. My stress level's lower. I'm able to think through other processes. Maybe I use that time to listen to a podcast or to do something else. It's more me time. Then you get to the first stop, and who knows at the first stop if they're still going to want the kids in the car. But maybe you're lucky enough they all drive with them the whole rest of the way. But that's the best example that I can possibly think of for you guys is if you're looking to do something else outside of what you are comfortable with, you have to be able to say no right off the bat. If you don't, I can promise you this, even if you think you've thought through every scenario, you have not. I can promise you that. There are times where I'll be working on a project. I will get the modeling done for this. I'll give it to our drafter. He's thought through it. Our project managers have thought through it. Our fabrication team has gone through it. We've all looked at every which way something can go wrong. It comes time to actually build it, and we're going to run into 2 or 3 hiccups every single time. It doesn't matter. You can think you are well prepared, but you're not until you go through the build process. That is something you have to do in parallel before you take it on. At the beginning, one more example here. When I started working with fire departments and we were selling fire training devices, there were times where we would think of new ideas for like, oh, this would be really cool to do. And the first couple of times I actually implemented it to a customer before it had gone through our NPI process, our new product integration. And I delivered that to a customer. Luckily, it was just an add-on part. So I utilized that customer to give me the feedback, but it didn't work like I wanted it to work. That's why we now have the processes that we do. If we're going to bring on something new, we have to think through the process. My encouragement to you guys is this. Start on what you know. Keep the overhead low. If you have to say no to things, say no to things, even if you think that you can do it. I can promise you the thought processes and the mistakes that are going to come up that you have not thought through are going to come up. Say no if you have to. If the person goes somewhere else for that project, fine. At least you're still doing what you are best at, because as we've already talked about, your customer is your biggest salesperson. It will do you much more hurt, bring you much more anxiety if you do something and do it poorly than if you do something that you thought out. So in closing, stay in your lane. Don't have as many kids. No, I'm just kidding on that front. Stay in your lane. Do what you know you can do well. If you keep your overhead low, do what you do well. Even if you think you can do something, stay in your lane. That's probably the quote of the day. Stay in your lane. If you guys like what you heard today, I hope that you hit the like, hit the subscribe button, continue to follow us on social media, and until next time, stay sharp and stay resilient.